Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Zach and this is Exploration Overland. We are going to do an 18-month review on the T4 hub tent. Stay tuned, guys. Alright everybody, as I said, we are going to be doing a long-term review. I've had my T4 hub tent for 18 months now, and I wanted to give you guys a longer term review of how the tent is holding up. And first and foremost, yes, we are in my backyard. The reason for that is the Jeep is in the shop getting fixed. If you guys saw the last episode that I put out of my trip through Idaho, doing the Idaho BDR, you guys will know that I developed an oil leak during that route. So they have to take it, they had to fix, they're doing their work to it. And at the same time, they're doing a bunch of other maintenance that it was just due for. So right now I do not have the Jeep. Otherwise I'd have the tent set up and everything like that. I can't set the tent up in my backyard because right now Lindsay has turned our backyard into a massive garden and there is stuff everywhere and not enough room to set up a tent. So that's okay. I got tons of footage and I think we can get through this, so let's get to it. So having this tent for 18 months, I have put it through its paces, through all types of weather, all types of terrain, all across the United States. It has been a very, very good tent. I will start off by saying that the T4 hub tent has been fantastic. And for those people that don't have rooftop tents or do not prefer rooftop tents, the T4 hub tent is a great tent that is very, very easy to set up, break down, and put away and just go about your day, guys. It is very, very simple. You're not messing with a bunch of poles and trying to slide it through the canvas. You just don't. As you guys will know from my other videos, you just pull out the sides, the tent erects, and then you're good to go. But having it for 18 months, there have been some really nice pros to the tent and some very big cons. And we're going to step into that because that is what people are looking for, is what is good about the tent and what is bad about the tent. So let's get into it. Let's start with the goods. First off, the canvas that the tent is made out of is very, very strong. I have 0 rips in it after using it on almost every single trip minus 2, because we have a whole different tent for that, but it's never ripped. The zippers have never gotten stuck. It works tremendously well. It just does. And the rain fly is very strong. It's made of the same material. It is very strong. It goes up. I've had no issues with it, connecting it, all that. The inside of the tent, it is very roomy. It is very, clean. And then also the bag of the T4 hub tent is a very strong, thick material. I have no rips in the bag. As you guys know, it sits on top of the Jeep. I throw it on the ground. I sometimes drag it. It has not ripped whatsoever. It has been perfect. And when it comes to weather, the tent has held up through all types of weather. Now, I have waterproofed this tent. I have used waterproofing on all my tents just to give it that extra layer of protection. Guys, I've had 0 drips, no leaks, nothing. It has been fantastic. And I should note that the structure aspects of the tent, the poles that allow you to just pull out the sides, things like that, nothing's broke. It has never gotten stuck, jammed. It has always worked smoothly for me when I am erecting the sides, the roof of the tent, everything. It has just been awesome. Nothing structurally or canvas on the tent has ever broken, and I love it for that. Let's get into some of the cons now. And the cons, the reason the pros were so quick is because it is a very good tent, guys. I cannot state enough how good the tent is. I've never been leaked on. It's never broken. I have been loving it, and it has tons of room, enough for, because it is a 4-person thing. You could put 4 people. For just me and sometimes Lindsay or somebody else, it has been perfect. Though if you're not with your partner, it's kind of close quarters. I'll say that. But the cons are things that have just, though I live with it, they have just grown to be more of an irritation to me. And for people looking to get this kind of a tent, is something just to keep an eye out for. Now you're probably wondering what could be a con if I said it's structurally good, the canvassing is good, it just holds up. Well, first and foremost, this tent, because it's so easy just to pull out the sides and push at the top, most people don't stake it down. Like any tent, If air gets under it because it's windy, it can attempt to blow away. That's not a big deal. You throw some weight into it, it stays. The issue I have with this tent, though, when it comes to wind, and I've had a lot of people comment about this when I'm on trips, and I said the tent collapsed on me at 30-mile-an-hour winds or more, and they go, they've never had an issue, is most people, me included, when you erect a tent, especially a hub tent like this where you just pull out the sides, you're not taking the rope provided and the extra stakes and slinging it through the little eyelids on each wall and then staking it down to keep the walls up. Because this tent just erects and it stays holding itself, you don't typically do it because you're only going to be in it for a night. If you're in my situation, I'm only at a camp for a night. I pack it up the next morning, I go. Well, when the winds become really, really bad in the middle of the evening, if you don't have those tie downs holding the walls out, the walls can collapse in on them. And I've had people tell me that they've never had an issue with it, and I guarantee you it's because they've tied down the walls. It's my only thing, because I have had this in 30, 40, and 50 mile an hour winds, and unless I tie down the walls, they just collapse in on them. So that is my biggest con. Now, I have to admit, if you stake out the side walls, that tent doesn't move. The rain fly will flap in the wind, but the tent itself will not move or budge like some tents do where they start leaning sideways. This tent does not do that, especially if you have the walls staked out so that they can't just collapse in on themselves. Another con with this tent, it's not a big con, and it's one that I've learned to live with, but it is something that you guys, as people possibly looking to get this tent, should be aware of, and is that the rain fly stakes. So on all four corners of the tent, you have a stake that are stuck in the rain fly that you slide into the stake holder to help erect the top of the tent with the rain fly. On the ends of these stakes, they do have a silver metal coupling that helps kind of locate it into the tent stake, into the holder. Those have a tendency to break off and fall off. So they're only glued on, and they can, as time goes by, come loose, break from the glue, they fall off, you'll never find it again. I have two that have come off on my tent. It's not a big deal. They still fit into the stake holders on the tent. It's just something to be aware of, and I put it as a con just because I've learned to live with it. But it's just something that went wrong with the tent in that retrospect, but it still works just fine. And no, I've never found my little silver things that have fallen off. They fell off while putting the tent, folding the rain fly and putting the tent away. Realized it when I re-put up the tent the next day at camp. Had no idea. They've been gone for a while. Obviously, it hasn't hindered my ability to use the tent. Another thing about this tent, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a con, it's just to be aware of, is that if you do not use a tarp underneath the tent when you erect it, like I do not use a tarp, it just sits on the bare ground like it is. When you go to collapse the tent, you collapse it up and everything, you have a band that you stick around it to help keep it in its collapsed form. You are going to get extremely dirty or dusty or whatever the condition was on the ground when you are collapsing the tent. Just because the floor of it, because it collapses inward, so the floor of the tent is now, the sides as you are putting it away. However dirty it is there, it'll probably end up on you. Just a side note, it's nothing bad, it's not a con, I'm just saying that like any tent is a possibility, but this one tends to get on you a bit more just because when it collapses, you generally are trying to do it while it's still standing up. You could lay it on the ground, but you're still going to get dirty trying to move it. But it's just one of those little things. And one of the other cons of this tent, and I say it's a con, it is a design flaw is what I'm going to say it is, because it is the number one thing besides the walls collapsing in I hate the most, and that is the doors leading into the tent. Because they made it a hub style tent, which is great, the doors are at this lovely arcing angle in the corner. And no matter if you open the door all the way or not, your feet tend to clip the bottom edge of the canvas of the door as you're trying to go in. You have such a strong tendency to clip it. And you will probably hear people say, it's not that hard, you just lift your feet. I guarantee you they've tripped on it themselves enough times, because after a while you're not lifting your foot high enough to get it through that door. That door is a design flaw. It just is. It is a very annoying one. They could have made it a bit wider of a door, but it being in the corner like that, you do tend to trip on the door itself. I do it every time, no matter how many times I lift my feet. I still trip on the door trying to get in and out of the tent, and it can be a little frustrating, especially if you're holding something and you trip and now you're trying to prevent it from falling. But that is a bigger con to me and a design flaw. That is one thing I really hate about this tent. The walls collapsing, I can't stand it, but you can easily tie that down. The doors you cannot fix. And that is the one thing I hate above all things else about this tent, is the doors. Otherwise, guys, the tent is great. Yeah, I listed out some cons. Like I said, guys, a lot of them you learn to live with. It's easy. The doors you learn to live with, but it's annoying. But the tent overall, structurally, it is awesome, and I've had no issues with this tent whatsoever, and it has been fantastic, and I absolutely love using it, guys. Setting up my tent when I get to camp, it literally takes less than a minute to erect the entire tent and to throw all my stuff into it. It is great. And collapsing it takes just as long. You just pop it all in, pick it up, you're done within a minute. It's almost as easy as a rooftop tent, minus you got to put all your bedding into it. So I hope you guys found this informational. I wanted to give you guys that quick video on, a long-term review of this tent. There are a lot of people that they use the tent for a little bit, they use it occasionally. Guys, I use this tent on every single adventure I go on, except for 2 of them, because I have a whole different tent for that now. But I've used it on every adventure, and it has never failed me in erecting, and it's never ripped, which has been fantastic. If you guys are interested in the tent, a link will be in my link tree that you can click over to over to the Gazelle website. There are other places you can find the tent, sometimes cheaper. Gazelle normally has a lot of sales going on, and it is as supplies last generally. They're not a sponsor of my channel, guys. I just really like this tent, and I wanted to share with you guys what it has been like having this tent for 18 months and actually using it all the time during that 18 months. So thank you all for joining me. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, guys. Trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and you guys are what makes this channel happen. Otherwise, thank you all for joining me, and I'll catch you all next time out on the trail.